In this series of videos, we're going to take you step by step through how to undertake a UKHab survey within the Coreo system. By the end of this series of videos, you'll be able to create a UKHab survey project, set up pre-survey data, undertake your baseline survey, and then also work with your data in the Coreo admin area. This will involve exporting your data direct into the metric, into the condition assessment sheets, and producing report-ready data. In order to do this, your organisation will need the UKHab Survey add-on license. Assuming you have that, you'll be able to go to Project from Template, choose the UKHab Survey template in the top left of the template gallery, and then set up your first project. Over on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll be able to set up your team members for this particular project. So you'll see all of the team that exist within your organisation, and each member can have their own level of access to this particular project. On the following screen, you will then be able to import a boundary. Now this is typically a red line boundary for development sites, but it could be any type of boundary for your particular site area. And you can either do this by drawing on the map, or you can import your red line boundary or site boundary from your file system. I'll do the latter, and your redline boundary or site boundary can either be in GeoJSON or shapefile format. Once you've imported your site boundary, you can edit the boundary, and you'll see in the top right hand corner the total area covered by that site boundary. If you're happy with that, click on Create Project, and this will set up the rest of the project for you. Clicking on Go to Project will then take you to the empty state of the project. And on the left hand side, you'll see the side panel with a UKHab section within it. There are three sections at present: pre-survey, baseline, and species feature notes. If you select pre-survey, you'll then be able to set up the pre-survey geometries ready for your baseline survey. The table at the bottom is currently empty because we don't have any existing pre-survey data yet in this project, but we can see our redline boundary that we've just imported. And there are several different ways that you can import pre-survey data or add pre-survey data to your project. The first of those is to import pre-survey data via an SBI number. So if you're working with farmland plots and you have access to farmers' SBI numbers, you can input those here for direct access via the RPA to import area features and linear features. In this case, we're going to import pre-survey data from our file system, and again, this can be in GeoJSON or shapefile format. As part of the process of importing data from your file system, you have the opportunity of mapping certain columns of data or attributes across into the UKHab pre-survey form. The only two questions that you can map data across to are the UKHab level 2 and the notes question. The system has identified that I've actually got level 2 data in my dataset, which is correct. But if the system doesn't pick that up automatically for you, you can just click on the drop down, scroll to the attribute that contains that information, and then select it. I don't have any notes that I want to add, but this could be things like MVC data from previous surveys that you want to put into the notes for future reference. Clicking on Import will then bring those geometries into the pre-survey for me, and you'll see that they've been assigned the UKHab standard symbology. When you're importing your data into the pre-survey, if you do want to map data across into the level 2, it will need to be in the UKHab standard, which for grassland, for example, will mean that the data has to be stored as lowercase g. Once the data's mapped, you can click on each of these habitat features, and if they're incorrect, you can reassign them just by clicking on the drop down within the table and then reassigning them. There are two other ways to add data to your pre-survey. The first is in the top right hand corner, you can add a record. This will bring up a modal with a map and you can then switch on using the layer selector the UKHab pre-survey data that you've just imported, so that then you can create new geometries with reference to that existing data. But you can see at the bottom you've got access to all of the different information contained within the UKHab pre-survey form. If you don't want to go to that extent, you can instead use the Add Geometry feature in the bottom right hand corner. So clicking on that will bring up the GIS tooling in the top right hand corner, and let's say we want to add a polygon to capture this field. We'll go and change from multi-polygon using the geometry selector to polygon. I'm going to select use the mouse to freehand draw, and this tool, which is by default selected, the no overlaps tool, is pretty essential for anything to do with adding UKHab geometries, polygons. This will prevent any overlaps from occurring with your data. So what this actually means in practice is that I can be relatively loose with the way that I define my polygon with regard to the red line and any surrounding geometries, and the tool will actually remove those overlaps for me. If I zoom in, we can see that we can create gaps. That's fine and that's perfectly valid. But if I then try and overlap with the neighboring geometry, the tool will just automatically remove that for me. We can also use some of these other tools over on the top right hand corner, such as the cutout tool, to then do other things like remove areas from within our parent polygon. So I've just drawn an area which might represent a different area of habitat condition, for example. And to complete that, I just need to click on the tick, and that will remove that from the parent geometry. I can capture that area very easily in the next example. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on Save Changes. That geometry will appear, as you can see, just as a generic grey colour, and that's fine. If you want to leave it like that, that's not a problem. This just means that it doesn't have a level 2 code assigned to it at the moment. If you do want to assign a level 2, just select the habitat, click on the relevant entry within the table, and then assign the habitat code to it. Now you'll see at the moment this habitat feature is selected, which means that over in the right hand corner at the bottom, our plus tool is now a little pencil icon, which means that it's in edit mode. So if I click on that now, I'm just going to drop back in to be able to edit this geometry. So I can do that at any point for any of the geometries that I've previously entered into the system. Once I've made those edits and clicked on Save Changes, it will revert to a plus symbol. Another way of doing that is if I've got a habitat selected, bottom of the table here, you can see that we've got a deselect and a delete option. So clicking on deselect will just remove the selection and revert that back to a plus symbol. So now I want to select this, let's call it a pond, that I've cut out of this parent geometry. I'm just going to go back, click on the plus symbol, bottom right hand corner, make sure that polygon is selected, reselect the use mouse option. The no overlap is selected already, but just double check that. I'm just going to loop around that very quickly, and that tool will then very neatly capture that inner ring for me. Click on Save Changes. Again, it's going to appear as this generic grey colour. Just select that. And then if you want to assign your level 2 code to it, you can just do so in the table. So that's the process really of populating your site with pre-survey data. In the next section, we'll have a look at how you can do a site evaluation. So looking at designated sites and so on that are in proximity to your red line boundary. And then we'll go on to have a look at things like adding your baseline data. So to do your site check, if we just zoom out of our red line boundary to provide a bit more geographic context, we can go across to the layer selector on the left hand side and click on that. And within this, at the sort of middle of the modal that comes up, you can see we've got this data layers section. Probably the easiest thing to do is just click on Show All. I'm going to deselect the top two options because they cover the whole map area. And here you can see the variety of different designated sites that we've got layers for within the system. So this covers things like SSSIs, National Nature Reserves, Local Nature Reserves, Ramsar sites, National Landscapes, and so on. So once you've done your site check, you can of course then just turn those off. And some other things that you might want to pay attention to within this layer switcher or map settings. You've got the ability to, of course, change the data layers, the base mapping that's presented to you. But you've also got the option later on of changing the symbology that's used for your project. Now, this is much more relevant to your baseline project, so we'll come back to look at that later on. As part of your project setup, you may also want to import your own map layers, so you can also do that within Coreo. Within the build section of the side panel, you'll see the maps and boundaries option. So select that and you'll then see a full screen map, and in the top right hand corner, a small modal with custom and bounds. So bounds will just show you your red line boundary that you've previously imported. So this is where you could go to edit that if you need to. It will also show you the area of each boundary that you have loaded up. So if you've got a site that's got disparate red line boundaries, you'll see each of the areas specified separately here. If you want to upload your own custom map, so this might be things like OS master map layers, or it could be things like GeoTIFFs, you can import those using the custom tab. So clicking on the import custom layer button, you get the option to import a raster image or a shapefile. I'll go ahead and import a raster image. So in this case, it's really a GeoTIFF. So we're going to choose GeoTIFF to upload. I'll just navigate to a folder where I've got some GeoTIFFs stored already. And this process of uploading the GeoTIFF might take a minute or so, depending on the file size. We'll just give our GeoTIFF a name. And once complete, we'll add map layer at the bottom. That will then appear over here in the custom layers section, and you can choose to show or hide that map using the eye icon. You can zoom to it using the magnifying glass with the plus symbol on it. And in terms of a GeoTIFF, the edit tool will allow you to change the name and delete it if you don't need it any longer. For shapefile data, so things like OS master map data that you're importing, or any of your own shapefile information, you'll be able to style that shapefile as you like in this section as well. So once you've added any custom map layers, that's your setup process complete, and you're now ready to move across to the Coreo app to complete your baseline survey.